we practice something called managed intensive grazing. And that is a form of pasture management that does not allow herbivores on the ground for extended periods of time. Generally, what its goal is to capture the herbivore action of pruning and mobbing and grazing, and do it in a short period of time in a kind of a natural system environment. So in our particular field, we have taken our many acres and divided them into different paddocks. And we allow the goats into each individual paddock for certain specified periods of time. And those times are determined based off of the time of year it is, so the particular point in the season that the goat might find herself, the condition of that pasture, the condition of the animals. But ultimately what we're looking to do is each pasture will be grazed multiple times throughout the season. And so we'll put goats out here. Because of the number of goats we have, even a 2-acre field like this might only be something that the goats can be on for 12 hours or maybe 24 hours. But it will never be grazed more than 60% of its capacity. So we never want the goats to take more than 40% of its capacity off. So in this paddock that's here to my left, they were on that paddock for less than 1 week. We wanted to see them trample and graze the top growth. Now when goats trample and graze the top growth, what they're doing is they are, without stressing the plants, causing those plants to grow faster and more vigorously than they normally would. After they've gotten about the first 40% off and there's about 60% of the pasture left, we'll cut them off of that pasture for at least 4 weeks and usually up to 6 weeks. And we have this next paddock right next door ready for them to go into. And because the paddock that they're in has more food than the paddock that they came from, they generally don't challenge the fence that much. But you'll see that there's a huge difference between those two paddocks. Now what's going to happen is you give this field here, this paddock here, 4 to 5 weeks, and it will be back just as lush and vibrant as this field. And that, because we're in the Pacific Northwest, because we have a lot of rain, because this particular field is actually sub-irrigated, we can graze this particular paddock 3, 4, maybe even 5 times in one growing season, all without putting any inputs into it whatsoever. And we can do that because of the holistic pasture management system allows for vigorous regrowth without ever stressing root systems of pastures. And that is one of the things that we're trying to do. We're trying to stimulate vigorous growth without overtaxing the plant. And because of that, the fields are healthier and the goats are far healthier as well. Okay, so we're standing here on the very the southeasternmost corner of our property. So the property to my right does not belong to us, and the property to my left does belong to us. The property to my right, our neighbor's property, has been continuously grazed for several years. That means that the animals have been left, in this case they were beef cows, they were left on the ground 24/7, 365 days a year, and this is actually in a period of healing right now because there has not been any animals on it for over a year. But normally the way this field would look is it would look almost golf course short. The grass was so short it almost looked like a putting green because those cows never let the grass grow beyond if they could get a mouthful on it, they would eat it. And what they wouldn't eat are these dark patches of sedge. These dark patches of thistles and sedge that are not only unpleasant for them to eat, they don't like them, they're also very indigestible. Over to our own field, you can see the difference that managed intensive grazing can make. In one field, it's continuously grazed and weeds are thriving. In the other field, that has been intensively grazed, there are no weeds and the grass is healthy and very robust. I mentioned that goats are susceptible to parasites. They're really more of a desert animal. And the Pacific Northwest is anything but a desert. And so we have to naturally manage their exposure to parasites. And one of the ways we do that is that we know that parasites live generally on the lower half of the grass stock, of the plant stock. And so if they graze below 50% of that plant stock, they're going to be into far more parasite-intensive areas than if we keep them to that top 50% of the plant growth. Also, the top 50% of the plant, the top 50% of the grass specifically, is where much of the nutrition is, that's where much of the protein is, and that's where much of the nutrition is that's going to keep them healthy and growing, as opposed to exposing them and the landscape to decay.